Oh, my goodness. We could do another show here, friends. We got my friend Katherine, constitutional attorney. Katherine Henry is her name. Now, I got to do a little bit of an intro here for you, okay? Katherine Henry is the founder of the Restore Freedom Initiative and the owner-attorney of Katherine Henry PC. She has 19 years of experience in the legal field, originally being licensed to practice in the state of Minnesota, now being admitted to practice in the state of Michigan, Saginaw, Chippewa Tribal Court, Michigan's federal court districts, and the United States Supreme Court. She provides our constitutional representation, education, advocacy to help restore our government to one of the people, by the people, and for the people. I love it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Katherine really quick. Thank you for joining us, Katherine. I totally appreciate it. And I meant only to carry over Nathan one segment, but I actually want an extra one. I didn't know that he was that good on radio, but he was. As a matter of fact, he should get his own radio show going if he's still listening, his wife and his children as well, because he's very good there. But with that said, thank you for holding on, Katherine. What I want to do right off the bat is there was over 400 that graduated constitutional courses, a law course, to become attorneys. And all 400 of them, Katherine, when asked to make reference to as or whereas a law comes from, not a one of them could point the finger back at the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the way that the Constitution does, especially when it comes down to state preambles. So I'm curious, let's just start this conversation off, Katherine Henry, as to where does constitutional law come from? Who do we make reference to?
Well, our constitutional law is, the source of that is not the government. The source of that is not Congress or the president or our governors. The source of constitutional law is it's the Constitution, and it came from we the people. So we the people made a contract to come together as one nation, and in order to come together as one nation, we wanted to make sure there were certain terms and conditions that we would all abide by, so that we wouldn't have the issues again, which led to us, coming up with the Declaration of Independence.
That's right. I was just going to go to the seedbed, the Declaration of Independence, which, by the way, many call the preamble to the U.S. Constitution on so many different fronts. It makes 4 references to God, and it's interesting how people would know the differences. As a matter of fact, we could even go back a little bit further than that, which preceded that when it comes down to the Mayflower Compact, and it does nothing but smack of the pulpit the way that our forefathers well, that's how they worded it, and obviously here we are. It's interesting, Katherine, because we went to Jamestown, and that's where our forefathers arrived back in the 1600s, and when we got there, the first thing that we noticed was this little fortified town. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but the first thing you see when you walk through the doors, you see the ship, the replica of the ship, and then you walk through the doors going into this little fortified town, and the first thing you see is that church. And when you walk inside of the church, it tells us right on the wall, it has on one side of the pulpit, it has Exodus 20, and then on the right side, it has Acts 2:38. And it's interesting how people are so confused as to our heritage and who it is that gave us our rights, because rightfully said, it was John F. Kennedy that said, think not that your rights come from the state. They come not from the state, but they come from the hand of God. What say you as an attorney? And the second question to that is, obviously you know the answer. What is it that you're up against when you're seeing what's taking place through the commandments of men that make void God's commandments?
Well, that's not a loaded question or anything.
Oh, sorry.
So I agree that our rights do come from God. In fact, it says right in our U.S. Constitution, in the preamble, the actual preamble, not just the Declaration of Independence, but it says that we created our whole Constitution to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So in order to secure those blessings of liberty, where did those come from? Well, we get our blessings from God. And here in the state of Michigan, we also have our state constitution, which comes right out and also says in our preamble that we get our blessings of freedom from Almighty God. So it's not a bad thing for us to be able to acknowledge that, number one, God does exist, and number two, that we get our rights from him and we protect them with provisions in our state and federal constitutions. But going down the whole church and state dichotomy or argument is a conversation, I think, for a whole other day, or several conversations for several days. But in essence, though, we do get our rights from God, and we have that contract in terms of that Constitution that is the supreme law of the land here among men about how we must act in order to make sure we are ensuring and protecting those rights given to us by God.
Amen. Let me segue it into something that we had talked about before. Case law versus statutory constitutional law versus God's law. Right.
So, what's interesting is that, and I'm going to be honest, I myself was in this very frame of reference in starting this whole COVID-19 stuff. And I knew things were wrong. I knew things were unconstitutional. Here in our state, our governor is definitely acting illegally outside of the bounds of our state statutes. But, I didn't really dig into it too much at the beginning or really understand it. And it's because, you go to, especially as a lawyer, you go to law school and you're taught all about case law. We're taught about cases right from the very beginning before we even ever had a country, before we ever had a constitution. We're taught about cases about property law and different things that are happening, over in England long before our country was established. And I get that shows the history and the genesis of, certain elements of how we get to be with certain laws on the books today. However, what it does is it distracts us as attorneys all across the country. I mean, I went to a very good law school in Minnesota. Nothing bad about the law school. All of them do it. It distracts us from recognizing that, number one, our Constitution is the Constitution. And so the only job of the justices and the judges that are all, at different levels of government, their job is not to create law. So we don't actually have case law. We have case opinions. We have an opinion of a judge or justice or, group of judges or justices who have come together to write an opinion to explain what law may apply or how it might apply in a certain situation. But to the extent that our state constitution is very clear on a particular point, that Constitution controls, whether it's our state or U.S. Constitution, that Constitution controls, period. And then if that Constitution does not speak to that particular issue and we have a state law on point, then the law controls, and the judges don't get to just rewrite it or change it or, interpret it in a variety of ways. We have to look to the actual language of those constitutions and the language of those laws themselves, and we have to step away from all this garbage that's been thrown in there when we have judges and justices that, you've heard the term legislate from the bench. Yep. They are trying to create what laws are, and everyone talks about it. Even the biggest advocates, the people that I have looked up to for years on how to fight for our rights and how to fight for our religious freedoms, and they start the conversation with, well, we have these cases from the U.S. Supreme Court that say, no, look at the language of the Constitution and go from there.
Yep.
That's where we should be.
It's exactly right. Article 3, Section 1, their purpose is to play the referee per se in the courtroom, make reference to God's moral law, Deuteronomy 25, in reference to his moral law, Exodus 20. It is not to act the part of a legislator, but this is what we see continuously. So, which, by the way, brings me right to the point of God's law versus man's law. Okay, so you have the government acting outside of their scope of authority and saying that now we can sanction the murder of the innocent babies. What do they want to do now? They want to remove God's moral law, which condemns the actions of those that are sanctioning the murder of the innocent in the womb. Now we see the government coming in without making reference to God's moral law. You can find it in every state statute, for example, Catherine, and it's condemning homosexuality. Now we have a government, we have a current administration that's advocating now what God condemns. How is it that they're getting away with what they're getting away with then?
Well, number one, I think too many Christians are not really paying attention to what Romans 13 says, but that's, I guess, a whole other conversation. But
it's a great one, though, but good point.
we're not educating ourselves. We are not staying involved and demanding governmental transparency, accountability, and accessibility. So for so many years, decades and decades, my whole life for sure, of course I'm only like 20, but we have grown up thinking of government being this thing that just gets to exist, and it has its own rights and responsibilities, and it's like its own entity unto itself, and we answer to it, and it just grows and grows, and then we're more disenfranchised, and then we step away and we throw up our hands and we go, oh my gosh, I don't know what I could possibly do about this. So we just end up feeling so lost and so hopeless that we run away from it and say, I guess there's nothing I can do. And so the number one thing we need to do is not let the government win anymore. Call them out on their garbage. And in fact, I can go through a whole bunch of stuff in a minute here, but I guess maybe a good starting point would be to tell you kind of what I've been doing, and then how that can segue into what people could be doing themselves.
Amen. I'm just thinking right now constitutionally to reinforce our message here, Article 6, Section 2, where it talks about the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. Okay, so again, going back to what we were talking about originally, Catherine, staying to the same topic here, it's interesting that man's law versus God's law, man's law, when it comes into place, regardless if it's case law or not, becomes null and void according to the U.S. Constitution. Then how is it that survives, and yet the U.S. Constitution is going under little by little? And I think that you hit that point great. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge, and we have too many biblically illiterates and too many constitutional illiterates in this country. So what is happening? We're being destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Folks, we're talking to Katherine Henry, constitutional attorney from Michigan. We're going to bring her right back up on the other side. We're going to keep going back and forth to give you an understanding as to how to deal with the issues constitutionally.
At the Sons of Liberty, we are in the trenches doing what it takes to protect our liberty. If you are already supporting our work as a son or daughter of liberty, we cannot say thank you enough. All we do is made possible by the generosity of faithful supporters like you. Together, we are having a positive impact on the future of this country we all love so much. If you have not yet partnered with us financially, we ask you today to consider becoming a son or daughter of liberty. Call 1-866-233-0747 or online at sonsoflibertyradio.com. Be a part of the team that brings responses like this.
Hello, everyone. This is documentary filmmaker Tom Dunn from ThroughTheBlack.com. If you are looking for a clear and logical take on what's going on in government and are tired of shows that are run by hidden agendas and lack of common sense, then check out Sons of Liberty Radio with Bradlee Dean.
Become a son or daughter of liberty at sonsoflibertyradio.com.
Silver has always been nature's very own antibiotic, and only one system allows you to generate an endless supply of natural silver solutions. SilverLungs.com. You'll find no wild claims or pseudoscience, just a lifetime of nano-sized pure silver solutions. The Silver Lungs generator allows you to make your own, so stop paying for silver solutions. The unique lung delivery system targets respiratory infections where other silver solutions simply cannot reach. See the Silver Lungs generator and lung delivery system at SilverLungs.com. That's SilverLungs.com.
If you or a loved one is a survivor of abuse by Boy Scouts of America representatives as far back as the 1970s, we urge you to speak up. We'll stand with you and get you the help and financial compensation you deserve. A jury in Portland, for example, awarded $18.5 million in punitive damages in one Boy Scout sexual abuse case. The Boy Scouts of America filed for bankruptcy, and funds have been set aside to compensate those injured. Time is limited, and so are the funds. Call today. Don't wait. For free information on how to file your claim, call All Survivors Advocates right now. We have a long track record in helping our clients get the legal justice and compensation they deserve. Please, we are ready to help you. Call today.
800-364-2984. 800-364-2984. 800-364-2984. That's 800-364-2984.
Have you ever thought about turning your Glock, XD Family, or 1911 handgun into a semi-automatic carbine? It only takes about 30 seconds. The MacTech Carbine Upper is classified as an accessory and can be delivered right to your doorstep with no FFL or background check required. It's the world's most versatile pistol accessory. Build your custom upper today. Simply go to handgunconversion.com. That's handgunconversion.com.
Welcome back again to the Sons of Liberty, friends, talking to Katherine Henry, a constitutional attorney from that of Michigan. And I get the name Katherine messed up because I'm used to saying Kathy, but she's doing an outstanding job. And I just wanted to kind of take it to task right away to see how far we could go. And Katherine knows exactly what she's talking about. So with that said, I want to go back and just kind of hit you back up, Katherine, with the fact that there's a supremacy clause. And the question was basically man's laws versus God's laws. And basically, when I read the supremacy clause in Article 6, Section 2, man's laws become null and void. But what we see is the opposite happening today, where man's laws take precedent over God's laws in this country. And obviously, that's the obvious answer as to why we're in trouble today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and what's funny is that in the segment a moment ago, you kind of made a slip of the tongue, so to speak, and you said, the trouble we're in is because people aren't aware of, the biblical passages that are relevant here. And you said that, and then you corrected yourself to say something about, what the laws say or the Constitution says. And I think both are extremely accurate. We need to know what God's law is, and we need to know what the Constitution is. And then we need to know how powerful each of those are and what their roles are, because everything else comes after those two things.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. So when you talk about the activist judges and those that are legislating from the bench, it absolutely amazes me how they, as you said earlier, that they become a law unto themselves, and people begin to make reference to them. Like, for example, the Supreme Court is the final say when it negates God's moral law. No, just the opposite is true. Again, going back to the supremacy law and found in the Constitution. So let me take it to the next question. I want you to go ahead and tell me what it is that you're doing as a constitutional attorney in educating the people across the boards that are willing to give their ear to the message that you're giving.
So it's interesting because I started in the first week of April when our government was shut down the middle of March, and shut down. So everything. And so by the first week of April, our legislature was considering whether they would extend the state of emergency, allowing the governor to keep us on shutdown. And I said, no, enough is enough. So I just started reaching out to every legislator that I personally knew, radio hosts that I personally knew, and try to get that message out to people. Like, you need to call your legislators. You need to tell them, no, do not vote to extend. Unfortunately, they did. But they started to listen, and in a series of interesting things that God has all been putting together, I've been using whatever avenues have been placed in front of me. So the biggest thing is through Facebook, but also YouTube, and a variety of other basically social media avenues, lots of rallies that I'll kind of mention in a minute. But, thousands of people have been coming to know me through those avenues where I'm simply talking about, here's what the law is. Here's what the Constitution says. Here's what, this particular executive order from our governor says. Just breaking things down and explaining it, because there are no other attorneys that seem to be stepping up to do that, to explain things to people, at least in the state of Michigan.
That was going to be one of my questions. Where are all the constitutional attorneys that are willing to stand up? Right now, you'd think they'd just be raining. They'd be just all over the place, making themselves available concerning the unconstitutional edicts coming from these governors. Now, let me just go in on that conversation, Katherine. And by the way, we're going to do this again, most definitely. But I'm curious, isn't it interesting how the American people have taken on the unconstitutional edicts as if to suggest that's law? And then when you make reference to the law, they act like you're out there on your own trying to enforce something that doesn't exist. I mean, you find this over and over and over again. And where does it come Where does it come where the governor in your state, because she's a prime example of what's going wrong with this country right now, because we notice that every time the people in Michigan stand up, she stands up a little bit higher to defy what the law says by bringing in the unconstitutional edicts once again. How is it that she's getting away with it? We know the answer, but I just want to educate the people that don't know the difference.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's to the point, and just to give the frame of reference, it's to the point that I'm someone, first of all, that has a disability. So I agree with, some reasons. I didn't catch all 7, but I did catch some of the reasons that were shared by your previous guest about why as Christians we shouldn't be wearing masks. But in addition to that, I have medical reasons why I can't wear masks, and I have, doctor's note and everything about that. So even if I'm going to play along with Gretchen Whitmer's game here in Michigan, I would still be considered exempt. But I walk into a store or into a restaurant, and I'm looked at as though I'm a criminal, like I'm about to harm someone. Yep. So it's really a disgusting place to be right now.
It's dangerous.
But basically,
it's dangerous. I mean, she's even gone so far in your state to tell business owners that you either become the mask police, and when they come into your store, if they don't have a mask on, you're not even to serve them. In other words, you can't buy or sell, Revelations 13:7, unless you comply with my tyrannical acts.
Absolutely. She is literally threatening people with misdemeanors. She's threatening them with license violations to pull their liquor licenses or their business licenses, or, Carl the barber, to pull their licenses, things like that. All over the state, that's the concern that people are having when they call me and they say, I don't know what to do because I need to be able to survive. Yep. I need to be able to pay for my bills and feed my children. And so, but basically the thing that's happening is, number one, it's some of the fear-mongering in general, just with, in terms of the coronavirus itself. But also, the fear, like I just mentioned, of people that know COVID-19 is no more deadly than the flu. They know the danger of wearing masks. They know all of that, but they're afraid about how to handle a government that has gone so awry. And so you have people, even things like the Small Business Administration of Michigan, or Small Business Association, of Michigan, it's being run by our former lieutenant governor here. And it's really disturbing to me that I went to a business recently, and it said right on the door, there was a mask sign that said, welcome. And it says, by Executive Order 2020-147 from Governor Whitmer, face coverings are required to enter this business. And then this particular sign actually had a little asterisk, and it said, unless you're under the age of 5 or for persons granted a medical exemption. Now, number one, we have far more exemptions in that the governor herself put in there. Number two, there is no such thing as granting a medical exemption. That's not even how the language of the order goes. But number three, it is not the law to do this. And that's where a lot of these signs have said flat out, it's wear a mask, it's the law. No, it's not even the law. And so what's happening is that, like you said, people are blindly following whatever particular, whoever is the loudest, basically. And so our governor has been screaming the loudest about this and telling everybody, make sure you go after your fellow citizen if you report them if they're not following my rules. You make sure that you're telling on them, because we need to do what I say we're going to do, because I'm going to keep you safe, because it's my job to do that as governor. No, it's not her job to do that. It's our job to put her in her place, because it's we the people here in the state of Michigan and in the United States. It's our job to tell them what we want. And certainly we need, in order to do that, we need to understand what laws are and what they aren't, what constitutional provisions really entail and what they don't. And so something that I have taken for granted for many years, and something that I'm going to try to educate people all over the United States, but especially in Michigan, is, like you said, if there is a provision of state law or even of a state constitution that goes against our U.S. Constitution, it's void on its face. It cannot be enforced. There is no need to go to court for it, because it's as though it doesn't even exist. Now, the same thing holds true for state constitutions. If you have a state constitution that is clear about something, and then you have a state law or an executive order or any kind of government action at all that goes against what that state constitution says, the state constitution wins every time, hands down. And you do not need to go to court to have a judge tell you that. You have rights as an individual created by God, living in the United States, where we have this country founded upon this contract called the Constitution. So we need to make sure that we're educating ourselves and not following blindly, to all of these, different directives and bullying tactics.
That's
and everything
right.
else. So, and
That's
we need
right.
to stand together.
That's right. They're browbeating into submission through forced compliance, and it's illegal. And Americans need to understand who the enemies of the state are at this particular time. Folks, we are out of time. We got Katherine Henry, a U.S. constitutional attorney, and it has been fantastic. As a matter of fact, Katherine, we're going to have you come back up with us shortly here. She's going to be with me, by the way, friends, August 14th at Stand Up America for the Thin Blue Line. And I'm going to lay this to you during the last minute that we have, if even that. Katherine, can you go ahead and share with the people as to how they can get a hold of you, please?
Oh, absolutely. RestoreFreedomMI.com is the website. RestoreFreedomMI for Michigan.com. Same thing at the Gmail, RestoreFreedomMI@gmail.com. Our phone number, our Facebook, our YouTube, all those other links are located right on there at RestoreFreedomMI.com.
Amen. Thank you again, Katherine. We totally appreciate you. And again, we're going to do this all over again. Folks, thank you for tuning in today. We love you by what we do. 1 John 3:18, and we will talk to you in 23 hours. All right? 1 John 3:18. See ya.